Anyone home? It's the landlord.
Trash everywhere, a pool stick snapped in half, furniture thrown across the room. That's what my brother walked into on a simple checkup on his rental. Maybe you're not a landlord yet, but you want to buy your first rental and avoid the tenants from hell. Because even if you buy the best property in the best neighborhood, getting one bad tenant can completely ruin your entire investment. So here's how to get that part right so that you're profitable right away. I use 3 what I call guardrails that I put in place to virtually guarantee you that you get consistent, high quality tenants. They are called the 3-month shield, the prime method, and the gotcha guard. If you do just these 3 things, you will be well protected. So my brother bought a duplex because he wanted to build strong financial security for his family by living on one side with his fiance and then renting out the other side to cover his mortgage. And it worked really well at first, until it didn't, and the other side became hell on earth for him. There was frequent screaming through the walls at midnight that constantly woke up his fiance. And to make matters worse, the very next month he got a text from the tenant. Unfortunately, I just lost my job. Can I get an extra week extension to pay my rent? My brother agreed, but then 1 week became 2 weeks, 2 weeks became a month. He found out that the tenant never had any actual intention of paying that rent. They were just stringing my brother along with broken promises to eventually pay that rent. Meanwhile, my brother was coming out of pocket for the mortgage payment and paying that tenant's utility bills every single month. Eventually, he hired a lawyer who had him serve the tenant with a 3-day notice to pay or quit that you can see up on the screen. And then after that, the lawyer handled a full eviction process. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you don't have protection. And I learned it the hard way too. I inherited a Section 8 tenant who had 12 children at that house. The housing subsidizer stopped paying the rent because apparently the tenant was behind on their paperwork and didn't show up for the required home inspections. I was able to eventually get that tenant out, but I never got any of the rent that was owed to me. And here's the thing that nobody tells you. The single best way to protect yourself against tenants not paying rent is using what I call the 3-month shield. As you can see up on the whiteboard, this means that I collect the first month's rent, the last month's rent, and then security deposit, and the security deposit is equal to 1 month's rent. And this happens before I even give away the keys to the tenant. Basically, you have 3 months worth of rent before they even move into the property. And of course, you want to make sure that you write this into the actual lease agreement. And what this does is that it ensures that the tenant can't just ghost you or squat on your property, because walking away costs them at least 2 months worth of rent. And even if you evict them, you still get 2 months worth of the rent as buffer for that process, and you can re-advertise your property right away. For example, one time I had a tenant who completely skipped town, but the replacement tenant that I found actually moved in just 2 weeks later. So I actually made an extra month and a half of rent because that tenant paid me that 2-month buffer. However, here's one very important caveat here. Some states will cap you at just 1 month's rent plus the security deposit, depending on what specific city and state you're investing in. Though having the 3-month shield is super powerful, it can still fail you if you actually bring in the wrong tenant. Because if you bring in the wrong tenant, you still have to end up evicting them, which costs a lot of time and energy, even if you're saving money with that 3-month shield. So that's where guardrail number 2 comes in, what I call the prime method. This is the method that I use to virtually guarantee that you'll have high quality prime tenants staying at your rental. So prime is actually an acronym. The P stands for placement of advertisements. You want to place your ads in the right place, because if you put it in the wrong place, it's like fishing in an empty pond. So what I do is, because I rent out to college students, I'll place my ads into Facebook college housing groups, because the people who are in those groups are usually all college students. Other places are the college's actual off-campus housing site or room for rent websites like roomies.com. R stands for reviewing social media. I typically check out my prospective tenants' Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever is available online to see if they have any pictures of smoking, alcohol, drugs, or going to a lot of wild rave parties. Because if they do those things, I'll usually have to disqualify them as a tenant. I stands for identifying the type of tenant that they are. For example, are they addressing me professionally, like saying, "Hi, Mr. Chaw, I'd love to get a tour of your property. Thank you so much." Or are they saying, "Yo, what's up, dog? I want to chill in your crib." Obviously, I prefer to rent to the former person. M stands for measure responsiveness. Typically, the more responsive a tenant is, the more responsible they are. For example, if they're getting their paperwork back quickly to you, they're probably going to be a responsible tenant. If, for example, I send a late rent notice to my tenant, I would like to get that rent paid within 24 hours rather than having to wait 3 weeks and wondering if I have to evict this tenant. That's why responsiveness is really important. And then finally, E stands for ensuring proof of income. You have to make sure that the tenant's able to make enough income to pay the rent, and usually that's 3 times the monthly rent you want to be seeing as income. Now, because I rent to college students, typically you can have the parent show their bank statements to demonstrate that the parents can afford the rent. And a lot of times I'll have the parent co-sign as a guarantor on the lease agreement so that they're on the hook in case there are any damages found at the house after the tenant moves out. What's also nice about college students is that they have financial aid, they have scholarships, they have student loans that they can take out of, or they have a research stipend to help pay for the rent. And so you never have to deal with unpaid rent because there's so many sources for them to actually pay it. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can get more videos just like this that help busy professionals get started in real estate investing with their limited time available. Finally, the third and final guardrail is what I call the gotcha guard. Here's something that I tell my team. If you don't document everything and have photos and video evidence, then that thing never happened. For example, one of my tenants moved out and said that they were not the one who broke the screen door. What we did is we pulled up the before pictures which showed a perfectly working screen door. After my tenant had called around, it turned out that her friend admitted that she was the one who broke it and conveniently forgot to tell us. Luckily, that tenant's friend was honest and they paid the full $200 replacement cost. But without photo evidence, I would have probably paid that entire $200 out of pocket. But what really hammered the point home was what happened next for me. I once had a local boots on the ground manager walk into a rental after the tenants moved out only to discover that $3,500 worth of our mattresses went missing. These were mattresses that we just bought a couple months ago. It turns out that the tenants who moved out had told the cleaners that they were allowed to take anything that they wanted at the house because these tenants were moving out and aren't keeping anything. As you can imagine, I was panicking. What do I do? The new tenants are going to be moving in next week. So I reported the missing mattresses to the cleaning manager, and the cleaning manager asked us to show them proof that the beds and mattresses were there in the first place. Think about this for a minute. Somebody stole from you, and then you have to prove to them that you owned it in the first place. That's exactly what the gotcha guard prevents from happening. My boots on the ground person, per our request, videotaped every single room, mattress, furniture, all the way down to the kitchen utensils, right before the tenants move in. She had inventoried everything. After seeing the actual photos of our mattresses, the cleaning manager apologized quickly and went to work recovering those mattresses. Also, whenever a tenant complains to us that we charge them back for missing furniture, we just show them the before and after pictures side by side, and that's basically the end of that argument. So those are the 3 guardrails. As they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You want to prevent these things from ever occurring. But what if you do need to evict a bad tenant? You usually have to serve what we call a 3-day notice to pay or quit. Then you have to wait until that notice expires. Then you file with the court. You wait around 6 to 8 weeks while you're still paying that mortgage and they're living there for free. So you're obviously going to want to avoid that at all costs. My brother had to live through that, and I remember him hating his life during that whole season. Now, making sure you don't lose money to the tenant from hell is only half of the game. The other half is actually increasing your rental income. And when I first bought real estate, I ended up chasing the wrong number for years. I was basically trying to buy as many doors as possible. But I realized later that that was just a vanity metric and didn't build my true wealth. Instead, I got rich when I understood this. It's not about ROI, it's actually about something called ROTI and ROE. Once I understood these two concepts, I was able to retire from my pharmacist job at the age of 31 and start enjoying real freedom of time. I'll break down what these two concepts are and how they will actually make you rich in this video right up here. Go ahead and click this video up here to watch it now.